Good morning, everybody. Great episode of Gojo and Golic coming your way. Here's what you have to look forward to. Aaron Rodgers is officially on the market. He's been released by the Jets. We talked about it yesterday. We'll continue talking about it today. What is next for him, where he's going to land, and rebuilding the Bay. We'll talk about the 49ers and what their locker room's looking like. It's definitely a rebuild, that's for sure. Plus, Thunderstruck. The Thunder beat the Celtics, clinched a playoff berth. Very exciting stuff happening in the NBA. Some great guests, Dianna Russini, all that and more coming up on Gojo and Golic.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield here with you guys. We got a great show coming up. As always, download, subscribe, rate, review it, leave us a 5-star rating, and watch us live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on the Gojo and Golic YouTube channel. Subscribe and hit the bell for that so you can see day 2 of my life working off phone internet. Damn you, Spectrum, and this current outage here. We will get to Dianna Russini, the Athletics senior NFL insider, to recap where we're at in free agency right now, what the biggest stories were through the negotiating period, legal tampering, whatever you want to call it. We'll also get to what you need to know about Angel Reese's comments from the other day. I feel like I've seen a lot of scuttlebutt about what Angel Reese mentioned on a podcast in regards to a potential WNBA strike and what the players might be holding out for at a critical juncture in the WNBA's history. But we have the all-important update coming here. Before we get to any of that, before we get to Aaron Rodgers and his future, which feels like we've been talking about all week long, sad pictures of him, very contemplative, contemplative, I'm not sure how you pronounce that word, on a beach somewhere, still without a team. But, Dad, you went back to the doctor yesterday, and the question on everybody's mind, this is your checkup after your shoulder replacement. You haven't been wearing your sling like you're supposed to, and so everyone wants to know, did you go and lie to your doctor the way that we all do at the dentist when they asked us if we floss?
So I had 2 meetings. One was I didn't meet with the doctor. I met with the doctor's assistant who was in the operating room, and then I had my first physical therapy session as well. So you asked me yesterday, was I going to be a coward and wear my sling or not wear it? Because I'm supposed to wear my sling for 6 weeks, and I wore it for basically a week and 4 days and haven't worn it basically since. I wore my sling to both appointments, but I was very truthful with both the doctor's assistant and the physical therapist. I said, I'm wearing the sling now, but I haven't been wearing it. The initial look of disappointment on my physical therapist's face really said it all. She just had that look as a like a disappointed parent. And my heart dropped a little bit. I felt bad. But I know I'm not a doctor, but I've been through a few of these. Now, this is the worst shoulder surgery of the 11 that I've had, having a replacement. But the physical therapy session, she said she's moved the shoulder much further than expected, that there's much more movement in the shoulder than expected. So I didn't gloat, but deep down I was like, yeah, see? I know when I don't need the sling. I know when I can start moving my arm a little bit. I know. And I even admitted before the first physical therapy session that I went to a gym here, worked legs, but also picked up a dumbbell and started working that with my arm, of which she didn't look disappointed then. She looked like shocked and mad that I did that. She said, don't pick up any weights. So I probably won't pick up any weights anymore because she really reacted to that. But I feel, guys, I'm in the right because I'm ahead of schedule right now.
But, Senior, didn't she say something to you when you announced that you weren't wearing your harness?
Yeah, I mean, she said that the harness is meant to hold it in place so it'll heal quicker and, and things like that, But again, Isn't it healing quicker if I'm already kind of ahead of schedule? I can see wearing it out in public in case I get bumped or in case something happens where I have a natural reaction where I have to reach for something. Like when we walk the dogs and I'm holding the leash, I wear the sling so I know not to put the leash in my left hand and, Ted the bulldog take off and rip it out of the socket. So I'm kind of smart in those situations, but I feel I'm validated by being ahead of schedule.
But Senior, you're supposed to wear this for 6 weeks. You wore it for a week and a half. Here's the thing. You mentioned yourself how you were at the gym and you reached for a weight and you picked it up. It's because you're not wearing the sling. Part of it is probably to remind you not to use it, right? It's like you can't use it if it's in the harness, if it's in the sling. Now you're willy-nilly reaching for weights. You're going to go grab something and not even realize it, and then boom, we're back in surgery number 2.
That is the reason they said to wear the sling, but I'll say, again, I've had experience at this. I picked up the dumbbell with my good arm, I placed it in my left hand, and then did the exercises. I didn't reach for it or do any, movements, unnecessary movements with my shoulder. I feel
Jesus Christ.
I feel I'm winning this battle.
I only want good things for you, Senior, but I do fear that we will be having an I told you so moment in the coming weeks.
This just feels like one of those things where Dad's going to treat correlation as causation and not account for the fact that, hey, he might be healing a little faster because he does keep himself in good shape, because he was an athlete before, because his body is, responding to it well. And instead, he's going to look at it, oh no, I can push this even further, because I can already tell some's not going to be enough for you. The stage you're at now is not going to be enough to keep you satisfied in terms of your lawlessness with this. So, you know what? Congratulations on beating the doctor for the first time. I've likened it to the dentist, because there's no feeling like going to the dentist when you know you haven't been flossing consistently, but then you kind of get one over on them and you feel like you're on top of the world. So I hope you're proud of yourself. I hope you feel like you're on top of the world. But I'm with Jesse. I'm worried about the day that's going to come when you're going to push it too hard, too fast soon, because you think you know better right now, and now you've been emboldened by this whole experience. So we will see, Dad, as penance for not wearing your sling, coming up in a little bit in the show. We won't grade the agency, but we know you hate that. And so we're going to make you grade things again. We've done this before, make Senior grade things. We offered this up to the folks on Blue Sky last night. And so we have got a full list of random things for you to grade. At Gojo and Golic on Twitter or Blue Sky, if you want to add more. Dad is going to grade these things now as penance for not going about his recovery for his shoulder surgery, right? So we've got that coming up in about 20 minutes. We've got Dianna coming up off the top of the next hour. And Dad, we've got this stat that to me underscores the entire Aaron Rodgers tenure and the New York Jets perfectly and leads into our conversation about him. Because we all know at this point, Aaron Rodgers now going to be a free agent for the first time in his career. He's getting set to get released by the New York Jets, which is not surprising. The Jets told everyone when Aaron Glenn got hired that Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to be back as their quarterback, and they were going to move on and try and reset the culture and all these different things. But this really crystallized yesterday for me just how bad the Jets franchise quarterback play has been historically. Because Aaron Rodgers last year, in a season that we all largely will try to forget, Aaron Rodgers and the Jets included, threw for 3,897 yards and 28 touchdowns. Both of those were third on the Jets single season list all time for quarterback play. So what we would argue might be one of Aaron Rodgers' worst seasons as a pro overall, and the one that prompted the Jets to fire everyone and move on, qualifies as the third best quarterback season in Jets history, in case anyone's wondering what Aaron Glenn is up against going and taking the helm at that organization. So, Dad, in the last 24 hours, nothing really changed. Aaron Rodgers to the Steelers still feel like the most likely outcome for you?
Yes, it does. And by the way, just to tag that, the last time a Jets quarterback threw for over 4,000 yards, which wasn't much, Joe Namath threw for 4,007 yards in 1967. I mean, that's a drought. That is a drought. That is just amazing. Yes, I do think that Aaron Rodgers will end up in Pittsburgh. It seems like the Giants will be holding the bag of last musical chair team to get a quarterback and say, oh, I guess we'll talk to Russell Wilson. I mean, who else are we going to talk to? But I do think the best fit for Aaron Rodgers and the best fit for Pittsburgh of the quarterback situation left is Aaron Rodgers because of the available quarterbacks of Kirk Cousins. Well, he isn't really available. Carson Wentz, Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson. I actually do think Aaron Rodgers could put together a decent year. Again, if he's protected because he doesn't have the movement that he had. But I do think he could put together a decent year. And of the teams we're talking about needing quarterbacks, Pittsburgh is really the only one left that was in the playoffs and is still obviously shooting for that with the team that they have, the trade they made for DK Metcalf, that they're trying to stay relevant in the playoff picture. And we know about Mike Tomlin's run of a better than 500 record, 17, 18 years in a row. So, yeah, I do think the best fit is Pittsburgh. I don't think it'll be about money. Aaron should have all the money he needs. But again, I can't speak for anybody. And is it a money grab? Is it, I just want to keep playing and I don't care where I keep playing. I just want to keep playing, but I want to keep playing in the best situation of possibly making a move. But quite honestly, the Giants certainly not. And the Steelers, I don't think so. I don't think either one is contending for a Super Bowl. Certainly not the Giants.
Well, the Steelers are the only one that I think in this conversation, obviously, unless you give any credence to the Vikings portion of things. I saw Kevin Seifert at ESPN say the Vikings are entertaining that idea, but that's such a different situation. And that would really be the sign of Aaron Rodgers changing what he as a player wants. It would also complete the full Brett Favre life cycle, which I think just for the symmetry, I would be rooting for. Yeah. Now, the Vikings are a legitimate contender, a team that provided J.J. McCarthy can go out and, listen, do what Sam Darnold did last year. Very few people expected Sam Darnold to succeed. He went into ideal circumstances. He balled out and he got paid by a different team. J.J. McCarthy comes in as the former 11th overall pick in the draft. Now, he was the, fifth quarterback off the board, fourth quarterback off the board in that draft. And so he's expected to have success in an offense and on a team that provide the right infrastructure for that. Aaron Rodgers would be hitching himself to a much better wagon if he went to Minnesota and if that was a serious overture, but he also knows it would come with a shelf life. I mean, there were points last year in training camp when it seems like J.J. McCarthy was the way that Minnesota was going to start to lean for quarterback. And so I guess that would be the ultimate tell of Dad if Aaron Rodgers had fully turned the page on wanting to be the man, because I think Pittsburgh threads the needle of, hey, they're contender enough. And we've said for a while, if they could just get quarterback right, maybe that ends up being the difference on a well-coached football team in most other areas, while still not really offering any competition for him at the position the way J.J. McCarthy would represent in Minnesota.
Yeah, listen, Baltimore clearly is the favorite in that division. Cincinnati, you keep waiting because of the offensive firepower to jump back up. They were 9-8, but they need to work on their defense. Cleveland's pretty much out of it. Then Pittsburgh. But you look at the North, quietly, or the NFC North, quietly, is Green Bay pushing to be the favorite? I mean, Detroit lost both coordinators, lost players on their defensive side of the ball. Minnesota, obviously, maybe starting a for all intent and purposes, a rookie quarterback coming off a knee injury. I know they bolstered the offensive line, the D-line, Harrison Smith coming back for his 14th year as well. But it is a young quarterback you're probably putting under center. Is Green Bay quietly, the Bears got better. I don't know if the Bears are going to contend. They're putting a lot of different pieces together. You have to wait and see how they mesh together. You just wonder if Green Bay is quietly, one of the, near the favorite in that division.
Yeah, they've certainly got a great opportunity to be. They've had the least amount of change this offseason with everything you mentioned with Detroit and with the Minnesota Vikings starting a rookie quarterback. So, yeah, Dad, it's a great opportunity for them. Now, free agency outside of, signing Aaron Banks to an incredibly rich guard contract that might allow them to, move Elton to center and tweak some things up front for protecting Jordan Love. they haven't necessarily gone out and had the splashy offseason that maybe we thought they might have. We'll see how the draft goes for them. But it has been stability on a team that people maybe expected to take a little bit bigger step last year. But yeah, Dan, no, they absolutely, I think, are going to be one of those hot teams again and easy picks because they're easier to prognosticate. We don't have to wonder about how the coordinators are going to take, how the rookie quarterback is going to do, or anything like that. So I fully expect Green Bay to, at the very least, be near the top of that. You know what? In fact, I can check the DraftKings Sportsbook right now and see for the upcoming season for the division winners in the NFC North. Right now, the Lions are the odds-on favorite at plus 135 to repeat in the NFC North. And again, with all the talent coming back on that team with what they've done last year, totally understand that. Green Bay is second closest in the odds. They're plus 260 for second place in the North, followed by Minnesota at plus 420. Minnesota and the Bears tied at plus 425. So I do think that's the, again, first-year quarterback as a first-year starter at quarterback factor going in there for Minnesota, which besides that, Dad, the rest of their roster went out this offseason and signed interior offensive line help and Will Fries and Ryan Kelly from Indianapolis. On defense, they brought over Jonathan Allen and another signing up front defensive line wise. So they fortified some of the areas they need to. It's just we don't know what's going to happen at quarterback. And so right now people are going to be cautious. Great opportunity to buy low if you believe the Minnesota infrastructure really can, as I think I saw Ben Solak yesterday, become quarterback proof in terms of what they're able to do with that roster and that play caller.
And I just don't think Aaron Rodgers, I know they say there might be talk with Minnesota and Aaron Rodgers, but I just don't see that. I just don't see putting all your eggs in that basket to try and win now instead of starting the clock on J.J. McCarthy. Aaron Rodgers, I think, could have a good year, but I don't know about that good of a year where Minnesota can think we're going to contend with Aaron Rodgers. I think they're going to let that one go, and I think it's going to be the Steelers.
Yeah, I think if you're Minnesota too, and I think this is kind of what Dan Orlovsky alluded to the other day when he said there's a lot that comes with Aaron Rodgers and you don't want to invite that in there. A lot that comes with that is attention. And it's not to say that Minnesota, as one of the really good teams in the league and one of the favorites in the NFC, won't receive a lot of attention. But it's different when you've got Aaron there with the amount of media exposure, with the amount of attention he brings from the outside. And is that the environment around which you want to bring up your young quarterback? Is Aaron Rodgers the guy that you want helping? Now, again, this is where it always is worth knowing. The reputation of Aaron Rodgers among teammates and among people on the outside tend to be very different. There is a guy that's lauded by some of his teammates and has a pretty high Q rating. And I'm sure maybe at this point in his career, he talked a little bit at the end of last year about wanting to maybe help them bring along a younger guy in New York when he was appealing to the Jets. So, but we would, again, be prognosticating. We would be trying to hope and see something that we have not yet seen out of Aaron Rodgers. So I'm with you. I think this still winds up being the Pittsburgh Steelers that thread the needle on most. And Dad, they become really interesting because what you could say about Pittsburgh this offseason so far is they at least tried. Like we know relative to maybe the Dallas Cowboys scale of offseason acquisitions, they went out and they signed the biggest outside free agent deal in the franchise's history in not only trading for, but offering DK Metcalf that contract extension. That's a big reach for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Combine that with what they did last year trying to reset the O-line foundation. And I think that's a really interesting team that's had a defined ceiling on their success and is going to spend a lot of the rest of this offseason trying to break through. Coming up next, talk about another team trying to break back through. Are we worried about the 49ers? What do we do next with a team that waves by to stars?
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. And we are knee-deep in free agency in the NFL. So, of course, now's the time everyone throws out their ideas about what teams need to do moving forward. Ryan Clark had some interesting thoughts about the 49ers. Take a listen to this.
I would absolutely trade Christian McCaffrey, and I would try to get as much as I could possibly get for him. When you look at what Kyle Shanahan has been able to do, it's run the football. And I know we thought last year they missed some of the things with the versatility of Christian McCaffrey, but when you trade Juszczyk, you let some of that versatility go. You let some of the things you can do formationally go. And so why not change your entire philosophy from thinking about Christian McCaffrey as this Swiss Army knife, getting pieces for him and allowing guys like Ricky Pearsall to touch the football more with running the football and doing different things on quick screens, adding other players based on the assets that you can get for them. Also understanding you're looking for more available players than Christian McCaffrey was last year.
Interesting, fellas. Do the 49ers just need to blow it all up? You look like it's not the craziest idea here, Gojo.
Listen, I can understand in theory everything being on the table right now. The problem is, Dad, I don't know what you recoup for a running back that's now near 30 coming off the kind of injury-laden season that Christian McCaffrey just had. This is a little bit different than the guy we saw a couple of years ago that was Offensive Player of the Year, and as I said, sort of have mimicked the Saquon Barkley trajectory for a little bit. And I think as you go forward, you still do need some semblance of an identity on offense around your quarterback. And Christian McCaffrey is the guy that can offset the most of those losses for you if he is healthy and available to you. So I'd probably hold on to him right now. But do you think there's any credence to what RC's saying?
Oh, I completely disagree with RC on this. I mean, at the end of the day, he's a $9 million cap hit. I mean, that's nothing. And to your point, you have to keep some weapons for Brock Purdy. You have CMC, you have Brandon Ayuk coming off the injury, you have Ricky Pearsall who did a nice job coming in, you have Greg Kittle. So you need to fix the left side of your offensive line. But Christian McCaffrey, A, isn't costing you much, and B, I agree, he's 28 years old. He's been in the league 8 years, and he's been injury riddled. So you kind of cross your fingers on the production you're getting from him, and B, I don't think you get a lot back for him at this point. And like I said, he's just a $9 million cap hit. Next year, he would only be a $8.5 million dead cap hit if you were to get rid of him. So hang on to him for the year. You have him for 3 more years at $9 million a year, and then a cap hit of $25 million in 2027, which he'll never see, or that'll be restructured. He won't be a $25 million cap hit. but he's a $9 million cap hit this year, a $9 million cap hit next year, an $8 million dead cap hit next year. So I would hang on to him for at least a year and see how he recoups from those injuries. So, yeah, I disagree with RC.
Yeah, I think you're right. Financially, a lot of that does make sense. And we could be in that situation kind of like we were this year with Cooper Kupp and some other guys where, all right, you're starting to get up there. I think you would be 30 by next season. You're starting to get up there. If the injury situation doesn't work itself out and you're expensive, you become a cut candidate, especially in a world where we've seen this echoed over and over again over the last couple of days here. Your life is different now that the quarterback's getting paid. And for the 49ers, listen, they have already navigated a bunch of identity shifts during Kyle Shanahan's era. Christian McCaffrey just sort of represented the perfect Shanahan running back, and he unlocked so much in this offense that it certainly changed this latest iteration of the 49ers to feel like the one that had the best chance of going out and toppling the Chiefs and winning the big game in a way that Kyle Shanahan just hadn't yet. And Dad, I guess that's always the big question is we see with all these guys, and I think with Kyle and Sean McVay in particular, they're looked as the leaders of this new wave of coaches that have taken over across the NFL. And we've seen adjustment and change from Sean McVay already, both at the quarterback position and in terms of how they organize the offense. For Kyle Shanahan, we've also seen change at quarterback plenty over the last couple of years, but this is now what feels like the third or fourth reorganization of this offense around a different identity, and you wonder what that's going to mean for a guy like Christian McCaffrey, who, again, we're just hoping he's healthy again this season. Last year from the beginning felt so snake-bitten for him. Yeah. It never really got going. He spent so much time away trying to rehab, and when you see multiple calf Achilles injuries as part of the conversation, you just wonder how that works production-wise going into the future. So a lot of questions about the 49ers. Jesse, also a lot of concerns maybe in Detroit country. Amon-Ra St. Brown, very giving of some free agent. We know Dad doesn't like to grade free agency moves, but Amon-Ra St. Brown seemed very comfortable offering his opinions on some things he saw.
Yeah, he had something to say about the Bears' seemingly unlimited spending spree. Take a listen.
Bro, I feel like the Bears have unlimited money. It's crazy. Every time they're just signing new for like 40, 50 million.
Boom. Hey, yeah, they're trying to make sure shake.
Boom. Jonah Jackson, bang. Drew Dahlman, bang. Deo, I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
No, go give it a try.
I'll try Deo Adeyingbo. I saw like a crazy amount of money. Grady Jarrett, bang. Like, they're just breaking everybody off.
They're trying to get an O-line for Caleb.
They have unlimited money. What the is this?
I mean, their cap space is they probably have a high cap space.
Got me hot. Like, Ben's just making moves left and right. I'm like,
you're seeing it happen, like bang Bears, like you're like.
The red beep button is just like ding, 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 ding. But that's how impressive the Bears have been. You know, it really is.
Yeah, Dad, we haven't, I feel like, talked a ton in depth about the Bears offseason. And I do think, and he kind of gave it up there at the end, part of the concern, especially from the guys in Detroit, is they clearly, and we saw this on the way out as they all kind of tried to, jokingly poo-poo his candidacy, they know Ben Johnson's probably got a little bit of juice. We've already seen more in the way of personality and charisma from Ben Johnson publicly, which is the question we had, because privately we've all seen the play calling acumen, the way he built out that offense. And he went out and kept the promise immediately. Dad, if your words match your actions, usually things are going to go pretty well. And Ben Johnson said they could flip the O-line in an offseason, and so far it seems like they've done that. So how worried should Amon-Ra St. Brown and the Lions be about Caleb Williams and the Bears in year two?
Well, I mean, the Bears are certainly have an arrow pointing up, right, with the moves that they're making in a large part to protect Caleb Williams, who was sacked over 60 times. I mean, Ben Johnson knows where the bread is buttered, and that's the interior of the offensive line to stop that straight-ahead rush. And then the interior of the defensive line where Grady Jarrett and Deo Adeyingbo, as far as a D-end is concerned. I mean, I like the moves, but you're putting a lot of new pieces into the puzzle, and you have to make them fit. You can add names at positions of need, but are you going to hit on every one of them? I mean, that's the question. That's the one fear of You have a team that has holes to fill. They go out and fill those holes, and they're doing the right thing. Don't get me wrong. They're doing the right thing. But you have to wait and see if it all meshes and how it all comes together. They also signed Durham Smythe, who a tight end from Notre Dame. Now they have two Notre Dame tight ends, Durham Smythe and Cole Kmet, who was cut from the Dolphins. But you look, and in the latest Field Yates mock draft, he has the Bears at 10 taking Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State. I mean, you want to talk about 12 personnel with Cole Kmet and Tyler Warren, because Durham Smythe, I think the most catches he's had in the season is like 36. He hasn't really been out there as far as a pass game. He's a reliable guy, but you bring in Tyler Warren, you have Cole Kmet. Those are two really, really good weapons for your young quarterback, if in fact they go that route, even though they picked up, like I said, the tight end Durham Smythe cut from Miami. But that's everything. I guess I'll say it this way. On paper, it looks great. They have holes to fill. They're filling the holes. And they're doing exactly what they need to do. But I'll say, let's wait for practical application, because the odds of you hitting on every free agent that you signed or every guy that you trade for, especially when it's this many players, is not high. So that's what I'm going to wait and see. Right moves, right positions. Now, how does it play out?
Yeah, I mean, it can't be worse than it was last year for the Bears up front of the offensive line, right?
Right.
Like, I guess that's my whole thought.
I agree.
Yes, Jonah Jackson spent a lot of last year injured. Yes, you had Joe Thuney playing out of position for a lot of last year and certainly a bit older. And Drew Dahlman, fine player, not a world beater by any means, but a fine, solid veteran player in the middle of that, surrounded by two really good guys, the way he was with Chris Lindstrom next to him in Atlanta. I'll be interested scheme fit-wise for him with what Ben does versus all of the outside zone that Drew's been running for the last few years in Atlanta. But the arrow points up on all of those relative to where the Bears were last year. And then you throw in the play calling of Ben Johnson that kind of like we talk about with Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay and Kevin O'Connell, at least in Detroit when he was the sole offensive coordinator. Now, again, with Ben Johnson, part of the prognostication is, how does managing all the responsibilities of being the head coach affect his ability to go out there and be the same level of play caller? We don't know. It is a lot more on his plate. It is a lot more responsibility on game day than he's used to, other than just going out there and calling the offense. And so if that has any effect, then maybe that's something we have to account for. But Dad, in general, he's one of those guys, weapon as a play caller, like on his own, worth an upgrade at almost all positions. And then year two, Caleb Williams, does all of that, does the protection up front allow Caleb Williams to go and calm down in the pocket in a way that he just wasn't able to last year? All those things together, though, I would say, to your point, and I think that's the biggest takeaway, is the Bears understood the assignment this offseason, and at the very least, they have passed that. You know, they're in win the offseason territory because they got the coach of their dreams, because they went out there and attacked offensive line the way that they attacked wide receiver and weapons last year. And so I think Bears fans should be allowed to feel good about this right now, accounting for the normal margin of error that exists with any new regime in sports. Yours actually went out here and tried to do something about its problems.
Yeah, no, listen, I agree. You're right. They're up in the medal category for winning the offseason. But it's interesting how two different teams do it. One a bad team in Chicago and one a good team in Buffalo. Buffalo, they had a great offseason, and it was mainly re-signing their own, right? Re-signing their own top players, which can't be forgotten. It's just not about the new players that you bring. And, of course, they brought in Joey Bosa and Joshua Palmer, but they re-signed, 4 or 5 of their own, where the Bears were a bad team, and it's like, okay, we need not to re-sign our own. We need to replace some players on this team to get better. So they're two teams in two different positions. But give the Bears credit. Ryan Poles, the GM, they went out and they went after it. Ben Johnson, I mean, you could see the holes that they had, but Ben Johnson, identified the holes. Ryan Poles went out and filled those holes. So the offseason on paper, the old on paper thing, it looks great. But again, you have to see the practical application of them all working together. But they did exactly what they needed to do, yes.
Yeah, we're not grading the Bears 2025 season. We're grading their
No.
offseason right now. We're grading
Right.
based on what they had the availability to do. And it's a good point. These are two teams in two very different stations in life, in the Bills and the Bears that you just discussed. And that's kind of how we have to look at every team in the offseason is where are you at relative to the Super Bowl as the prize? And what does that require you to do at these different times a year? Some people have more needs. Some people had less needs. What all of this sounds like to me, Dad, sounds like you're ready to grade some offseason free agent moves. That's what it sounds like.
No.
It sounds like you were right. I could see you. You kind of got the itch. You got a little bit of the bug. It was fun, right? You felt good doing that.
Everybody gets an A because they filled the holes that they need. How about that?
No, that's not going to work, unfortunately. That's bad sports talk radio, and so I can't allow that to persist. So I've got a better idea. Again, at Gojo and Golic on Twitter, on Blue Sky. We have submitted a question. My dad hates grading things, specifically sports things. And so we wanted you to offer up anything that he can grade here. It can be your dog. It can be a drawing that your wife did. It can be something you cooked. It can be a series of television characters, whatever you want. Coming up next. Yeah, I say that one got you going a little bit, right? Fun to grade nonsense. So we've got a good bevy of nonsense for you to grade. And I will present my NFL free agency tiers coming up next as well and get your thought on that. So we'll give you a little look at where some of these teams stack up after the offseason, and then my father will grade your nonsense here. It's all coming up. Dianna Russini in 25 minutes as well. Gojo and Golic roll along next. All right, as free agency, the legal tampering period, the negotiating period, all of it rolls along into kind of this stage now where we're in a holding pattern. We're waiting for a couple of big names to find new homes. Aaron Rodgers and Cooper Kupp, both free agents that we'll be keeping tabs on to see where they matriculate to. We feel like through the bulk of this, though, we could start to hand out and assign some stations in life for these NFL off seasons. My dad hates the notion of grades. We've done superlatives on the show before. Dad, I've got something for you that's somewhere in between that helped me kind of organize my thoughts on NFL teams coming off free agency. And so I want to run these by you, and I want to see what you think of where I've slotted these NFL teams in terms of their offseason. Think of it more as tiers of NFL teams coming off the offseason right now, and how we can look at them. So, all right, I want to start at the top here, because coming off free agency, and this is not to say we're going to do every team in here, because there are certain teams like the Kansas City Chiefs, the Philadelphia Eagles that did some stuff that might get talked about a little bit here. But this one I look at as now coming off this offseason, I'll say this tier is officially Super Bowl or bust. And I have the Rams and the Bills on here, Dad, as far as new entrants to the party, where for the Los Angeles Rams, getting Matthew Stafford to come back, signing Devontae Adams, your roster decidedly older, but you kept the core in place. You don't know for how much longer. And so really, especially after last season, once your defense showed you what's up, it's time to put the pedal down on the gas. The same thing for the Buffalo Bills. We talked about this yesterday. Josh Allen won the MVP. You've gone out and added meaningful parts to this offense in a couple of different places. Wide receiver, Joey Bosa coming over as the signing to kind of be what Von Miller was supposed to be for you, a guy to kick down the door in the postseason, help you get some of those big sacks in critical situations. So are you in agreement that those two teams, that's the metric for success next season?
Yeah, I would put Bills at 1A and Rams at 1B, but I would put both those as Super Bowl or bust, because you're right. They swapped out aging wide receivers in Devontae Adams for Cooper Kupp. So guy that doesn't have a lot of years left, a younger Puka Nacua, younger Kyron Williams, keeping Matthew Stafford, tinker with that O-line, and that young defense just continuing to grow. And then the Bills, I mean, just the re-signing and the money they laid out for their own players before bringing in a Joey Bosa on a 1-year deal. Joshua Palmer now was a 3-year deal, but they cut Von Miller, basically replace him with Joey Bosa. Those two teams, I would agree, Super Bowl or bust, yes.
Yeah, Von Miller, they had to pay a lot of money to get over there. Different place in his career, just coming off the Rams Super Bowl. I think this one a little bit more modest, but the same message. All right, my next tier down was clear improvement. These teams got better this offseason through free agency. I had the Las Vegas Raiders, the Chicago Bears, and the Minnesota Vikings. While, again, we talked about the Vikings will be graded by the quarterback, I thought they went out and addressed interior offensive line and defensive line. We just had the Chicago discussion. And I do think for Las Vegas, having Geno Smith go out there and be able to play above average quarterback in the NFL for that football team is going to make them better in year one for Pete Carroll. So those are my 3 clear improved teams.
Oh, they definitely improved at the quarterback position. It will be interesting what position they choose in the draft. If they take an Ashton Genty and fulfill the running back position. But for Chicago and Minnesota, I agree. And they did it up the spine, right? Both of them, interior offensive line, interior defensive line. I mean, they know where their bread is buttered. So, yeah, definitely improvement with those teams.
Yep, I say not perfect. Grady Jarrett at this point in his career, we'll see. Certainly, all of it felt like an overpay at some spots, but that's what you do when you have cap space and defined needs. Is you might have to overpay a little bit, and the Bears weren't afraid to do that, which leads us directly to the next tier. Shout out to Denny Green, they are who we thought they were tier, and that goes to the Bengals and the Cowboys, who operated in free agency exactly like we expected them to. The Dallas Cowboys went out and did nothing real materially in this free agency. The Bengals talk about wanting to bring everyone back, and then watch Trey Hendrickson walk out the door this offseason. And so, Dad, are letting Trey Hendrickson walk this offseason type thing just didn't really show up in the ways that we expected. So I would say that the Bengals and the Cowboys are who we thought they were.
Well, the Cowboys definitely are, right? The Bengals tried to build up their fans by saying, no, we're going to re-sign them all. We can tag T. Higgins. He's square. We'll give Jamar Chase his money. We'll pay Trey Hendrickson. And then all of a sudden they backtrack on that and let Trey Hendrickson go ahead and seek a draft now, or a trade. Now, they may be doing what other teams have done and trying to find out what Trey's value is, and then will sign him when they find out what his value is. But it's tough to give the Bengals the benefit of the doubt of doing that because of past actions. So I would agree. And the Cowboys, I mean, just a lot of hot air coming from ownership and GM as far as things they're going to do and things that they actually do.
Yes, exactly. So a lot of blustering, a lot of waiting too long to sign key pieces has all landed them here. The next category I had was just a one-team category. I called them the Costco shoppers. New England, they bought in bulk this offseason. They attacked a ton of different needs through free agency. They were very busy, and they had a lot of needs to fill. So that one's sort of going to be interesting to watch, Dad. No strong feelings in general, like what they did defensively for Vrabel. They need more offensive weapons, but in general, a big bulk run this offseason of toilet paper for the Patriots.
It is. Also, I compare it to the Costco shoppers when you talk about in bulk. I talk about going around to all the different food samples. They sampling a bunch of food. Some of it is good, some of it not so good. So they did buy in bulk. They're sampling a lot of the foods going through Costco, which I love. I love sampling the foods. And we'll see what hits and what misses.
Exactly. Free samples abound for the New England Patriots. This next category I called the Red Queen. The Red Queen's a theory in evolution that you've got to keep running at the same speed just to stay in one place, kind of keep up with that. That one to me was Pittsburgh, Seattle, the Chargers, and New Orleans, where you saw the moves made, Dad, and in a vacuum you could argue some of them are good, but none of them feel like they move them demonstrably further down the road or closer to a Super Bowl than anything else. So it felt like movement just to stay exactly where they are. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Seattle didn't make the playoffs. I don't think they'll make the playoffs. Pittsburgh did make the playoffs, but got thumped. I think with Aaron Rodgers, they probably could do that. Chargers did make the playoffs. We'll see where they go. They brought back Mike Williams. Interesting. To back to his old home. And New Orleans is just, I mean, the fact that they had to guarantee a quarterback that they didn't want all that money just to help get them a little bit out of cap hell says it all about them.
Signing Justin Reed, signing Chase Young again. That team needs an intervention. They might need their own category. The last one, Dad, is for Kansas City and San Francisco. We trust you, but we're a little worried. Like, yes, you get all of the benefit of being well-coached teams and well-run organizations, but the offseason for Kansas City, signing a tackle people are unsure of, for San Francisco, losing parts left and right while you get ready to pay the quarterback. I'm not counting either of them out completely because, again, I trust the people at the helm, but it is certainly an inauspicious start to the year for both those teams.
I'm way more worried about San Francisco and all the players that they had to give up. Now signing Brock Purdy, and the health of Brandon Ayuk coming off the injury, the health of Christian McCaffrey coming off the injury. I'm worried about them. Kansas City, I'm worried about the left side of the line for sure. That offensive line really kind of bared the soul of Kansas City when Mahomes couldn't do his magical things because he couldn't get out of harm's way.
And in addition to the left side there, you also lost Joe Thuney to the Chicago Bears like we talked about before. So, interesting. So that's my free agency tiers so far as we get ready for this later stages of here. We'll talk to Dianna coming up in about 15 minutes about where we go from here in free agency. But where we go right now, Dad, is the grades that I need from you. So, again, you don't like giving out grades. We don't make you give out grades for the NFL anymore. But we did submit some people, or have some people submit things they wanted you to grade for them. So I want to go through here. Some of the folks over on Blue Sky were kind enough to send these over. And I want to start with this, Dad. I want to have you grade this from Shades of Offside on Blue Sky. My wife's chalkboard drawing this week for her 5th grader's Greek history class. What do you think of this? This is a chalkboard drawing right now from Pizza Logs on Blue Sky. Look at that.
This is an A. I mean, look at the printing. I mean, it's fantastic. The Aegean Sea and Mediterranean Sea, how it's printed out. This is a chalk drawing. This is easily an A. I would go so far as to say an A+. This is awesome.
Yeah, I tend to agree here. Lots of great color and shading in that. I am in awe of what people can do with a lot of things artistically, but with chalk especially because it's so messy and cumbersome. This gets an A. The kids in that class are incredibly lucky. All of the ancient Greek writing really nailed the assignment there. This next one, Dan, I was particularly jacked up about, but I want to hear from you. This man, and I think anytime you can say something blank I forged, you're automatically going to impress me. But CM Yuli 07 on Blue Sky said, here's a snail I forged made with nothing but fire, steel, and hammer. What do you think of the snail?
All right, he made it sound a lot tougher than it is. It looks like he melted a spoon. I mean, I'm not as impressed as you are. You can heat up anything and roll it or melt it and hammer it. I mean, it looks like a spoon. The bottom of that looks like a spoon.
It looks like a snail. It looks like a snail.
It does not look like a snail. If you didn't tell me that was a snail, and you said, what is this? I would have no idea. I'd say C at best.
Jesse, will you help me out on this? That looks exactly like a snail.
That looks exactly like Gary from SpongeBob. 100% snail.
Yes.
Yes, that's a snail.
Oh, man. So what's your grade?
A C.
Oh,
I give it a C.
Wow.
I give it an
Man,
A+.
I'm with Jesse.
That doesn't compare.
The snail, and again,
this doesn't compare to the chalk drawing. Does not compare to the chalk drawing at all. Different skill set.
Okay.
I am impressed by anyone that can work. I always would say if I could go back to medieval times, I would want to be a blacksmith because it's so inherently badass to be sitting there in the fire and the metal and the hammer and away and knowing that guy did that to get to there. Impressed me. All right, Dad, no spoilers on this, but Matthew Murdoch said, grade the new season of White Lotus so far. What are your thoughts here?
Okay. So I'll have to go incomplete because I'm only on the second episode. So I'm really just in setting up mode with all the characters. Obviously, as part of the first episode, they went a week ahead, showed the gunshots and all that, blah, 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 and then went back a week where everybody's coming on, going to Thailand. So I'm just in the middle of the second episode in, so I have to say incomplete. I'm just getting to know the characters.
A+.
All right, that's a fair point here. Incomplete there. The storyline with the family from Texas makes me deeply uncomfortable here.
They're
I'm glad
from
the
North
dad's
Carolina.
taking over.
They're from North Carolina.
Or North Carolina.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right, yeah.
From North Carolina.
I do agree
the
with that.
sibling portion of it makes me deeply uncomfortable. I'm glad they're focusing more on the dad. It feels like a slower burn than even usual for White Lotus, but I still think it's wildly entertaining. I am not of the ilk where White Lotus is some world-class show. I think it's very good. I think it's very entertaining, and I'm excited to see where this goes. Dad, let's get to the important stuff now. Let's grade these dogs. Trevor Frank put up a picture of his dog. I believe these are Cavalier King Charles with maybe the cutest eyes I've ever seen.
This will be a quick one. It's an A+. There is no dog picture that is not cute of people's dogs. Yep. I love dogs. We're dog people. We have 3 dogs here. This is an A+. And I find it hard to believe I would ever say anything about doggos that isn't an A+. So this is an easy one.
Easy.
If these dogs looked at me in that way in real life, I would burst into tears, drop to my knees, and just beg for forgiveness from these sweet baby angels. So A+ is all around. Last one, Dad, in the final minute here. Lucas Campbell says, please have senior grade the following. And I'm guessing he means rank these in order. Nutty Buddies, Cosmic Brownies, and Swiss Cake Rolls. The top grade wins the top spot on the Little Debbie Mount Rushmore.
I would go number 3, Cosmic Brownies. Number 2, Nutty Buddies, and number 1, Swiss Cake Rolls. I love biting the kind of the top layer off the Swiss Cake Rolls. I love it. Swiss Cake Rolls 1, Nutty Buddies 2, Cosmic Brownies number 3. That's the order. I'll eat them all.
I think that's probably 100%. And I think that's probably the right order. To your point, being able to take off the chocolate shell and potentially even unravel the Swiss Cake Roll. Is a delight. The Nutty Buddy could push for the 1 seed on its best day. I think that's an elite one. Another one, you can bite the layers in half if you're really trying to let your freak flag fly. But overall, a great round of grading. Thank you to everybody who submitted. We're sorry we couldn't get to all of those. That's the kind of grading Dad's up for. Dianna Russini starting us with hour number 2 next on Gojo and Golic.
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. In some smaller free agency news, Mac Jones has found a new home. The San Francisco 49ers are signing Mac to a 2-year deal worth $7 million with $5 million guaranteed. Jones appeared in 10 games last year in place of injured Trevor Lawrence. He completed 65.3% of his passes for 1,672 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. The Jags went 2-5 and averaged just 15 points per game. The 49ers, however, were once in love with Jones during the draft process. Now they get him on their roster as a backup to Brock Purdy. We will be back in just a few minutes with Dianna Russini.
Hour number 2, rolling along here at Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield. Again, plenty to get to with the NBA from last night. OKC stamps their ticket to the postseason emphatically with the win over the Boston Celtics. And interesting stuff on the way for the WNBA and potential labor disagreement there that I think a lot of people have some strong opinions on. Before we get to any of that, though, I have so many questions for our next guest and one of our dear friends of the program. She is the senior NFL insider over at The Athletic. She is the co-host of the Scoop City podcast. And Dianna Russini was one of the many NFL insiders who I'm sure, Dianna, as free agency and legal tampering got going this week, and Twitter was down, had a very different view of the way things were going. So walk me through that, Dianna. What's it like to be one of the premier insiders trying to go off in your holiest of holidays, and then all of a sudden the platform that you put news out on completely craps out?
Well, just imagine spending months working on these stories, meeting with agents, being on the phone with players, talking to teams constantly. I just got back from Indianapolis where, I ran around like a lunatic for a full week trying to collect as much information and to build those relationships with people. So the moment comes when you break the news, you could be the first to do it. It's the dumbest race in sports. I get it, but it's what we do. So with Twitter being down, that is where the race is held. That is what decide. That is where we go with who had it first. So with it going down, it was depressing actually, because my stuff was out there and no one could see it. So what happened was I was tweeting, nothing was going through. And I discovered, for whatever reason, Mike Silver, who lives out in California, he had Twitter. So he's like, just send me all your info. So Mike became essentially my Twitter handle. And so he was pushing out everything. And then PFT commenter texted me and said, text me all of your scoops. And I'm like, not now, because he does that all the time, because he always wants Commander's info. He's like, no, I want to do videos of your news because you can't get it out. I know you have stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. So I was sending him information, and him and Big Cat were just putting out everything that I was reporting right out of the gate. So it was so frustrating, but also kind of fun. It was a mess. I can't believe that happened. You know, like, just of all the times for Twitter to go down, and then of course we got creative too, putting it on Blue Sky and Threads. And I was just looking for any outlet to get my information out. And in that moment, didn't it make you guys realize we, as much as we hate X, in these moments, we do rely on it so much. So either way, I definitely missed out on stuff I know I beat everybody on, but I got to live with it and just keep on moving, you know?
Let me just say, as the old man of this group, it didn't affect me one bit. So I was fine with it. But for you, it's good you had friends in places that could get your info out. That was really good to get out. But so you made it through that. We've made it through the legal tampering. We've made it through the first day of free agency. And with all that and all the signings, Aaron Rodgers has still found a way to be the topic, right? Where all the talk now is about him and where he ends up.
Yeah, we're waiting. Everybody is waiting. Everyone's frustrated. I can tell you that. I feel like the New York Giants are almost at a point right now where they're just ignoring it and they're just trying to find another plan in case this doesn't work out. I think the Steelers don't have as many options. I mean, they'll obviously go find someone if Aaron Rodgers decides not to play for them, but they're in a position where they're waiting, and no one has had a lot of, there's not been a lot of communication with the player directly, despite the fact that contracts have been discussed, the structures of them, the money. And in the meantime, you've got the Minnesota Vikings here lurking, and they haven't made a decision just yet. They've had conversations over the last few days about whether or not they really want to do this. Does this work? We've got JJ McCarthy coming off an injury. We've got confidence and belief that he's the guy. But this is the same team that let Sam Darnold walk, the same team that didn't want to pay Daniel Jones the kind of money that we saw him get with Indianapolis. Do they see themselves as a team that can contend for a Super Bowl right now with the moves they've made? I'd argue yes. You see how much they've built up their offensive line, their defensive line. I love what Minnesota has done. All they need now is a quarterback to play at a high level. And this team, who already had so much success last year, despite the fact that they got bounced from the playoffs so early, they won 14 games with Kevin O'Connell, with Sam Darnold. And I just think this is a really hard decision to make as an organization. Do you go with an Aaron Rodgers type, who many around the league believe he still has a lot of gas left and he can still run a really high productive offense? Or do you say, we need to believe in JJ. We need to just focus on trying to get him back on the field. And we believe and have confidence enough that he's going to be okay health-wise to return. And, we'll go sign like a Drew Lock or, some veteran quarterback that's out there, a Joe Flacco maybe. But I just think it's hard, right? Because we know what it comes with. We know how Aaron Rodgers likes to run an offense. Kevin O'Connell likes to run an offense a very particular way with a lot of control. Whereas I think, you look at Pittsburgh, and I feel like Rodgers could go there with Arthur Smith and probably have a lot of say in what they're going to do. So all of this is fascinating right now as we're really all waiting. I wish I had an answer for you on what he's going to do.
I think trying to know what Aaron Rodgers is going to do is something that only one person knows, and the rest of us are going to have to wait and see on. A veteran free agent who is on the market for the first time here after being released and comes with comparatively less baggage. Cooper Kupp, no longer a Los Angeles Ram. Dianna, do we have any insight on where we're at with his free agency and what might be on the table for him?
Yeah, there are a lot of teams interested in him. I think his price range is it's a good number. He's looking to get paid around 14, 15 million. There's some GMs around the league that I spoke with about what they think his value is, and most believe it's probably around that 13, 14 number, but let's just say he can get up to that 15. I think there are teams poking around. I think Seattle's got their eye on him. I think the Jags are watching this as well. I think the Minnesota Vikings. You have teams that I also thought were interested that I don't believe are going to be: the Tennessee Titans, the New England Patriots, the Houston Texans. I don't get a sense they're in on the Cooper Kupp sweepstakes. I think the Green Bay Packers are poking around on it as well. So he's going to find a home here. I like looking at teams that are probably trying to push here to make a run for a place for him to land. I also know Tom Brady loves Cooper Kupp. I'm interested to see if the Raiders are going to make a push here. I'm sure they're having conversations. I just don't know if they're going to be willing to go to that pay point for Cooper. But I do think sometimes when you try to make these connections, right? And I do this all the time to try to figure out where to go next on teams that are interested in players and go, okay, Cooper Kupp in LA. Who was in LA that is now somewhere else? And sometimes that works to your advantage, and sometimes it works against you, because sometimes that could mean, well, they know so much, they're not interested, and then sometimes in some cases it's like, well, they know so much that they are. So just trying to piece that all together at this point. But for right now, they are just having conversations. He hasn't agreed to anything yet.
Is Russell Wilson clearly on the back burner of when he'll sign, waiting for Aaron Rodgers to sign somewhere? Is there nobody that will take Russell Wilson over Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, because the reality is teams are in insurance mode right now, because you've got essentially three teams trying to bring Aaron Rodgers in, or at least discussing it in terms of the Minnesota situation. But we know for a fact that the Giants and the Steelers are in. They're waiting. So I do see Russell Wilson as more of an insurance policy in New York. He's visiting the Cleveland Browns. He's visiting the New York Giants. I have a hard time believing he's going to go back to Pittsburgh. They could get desperate enough, and it could happen. I just think in their minds, they did the Russell experience. And for them, moving in a different direction seems to be their preference. But I'm talking to some agents around the league who've got some of these veteran quarterbacks, and they're in a wait and see mode as well, because Aaron is the first domino for this second wave here of these backup quarterbacks. So he's kind of holding everyone hostage at this point, and he may take his time. I had a general manager mention to me, why doesn't Pittsburgh just give them a deadline? It's like, well, where are they going to go? Aaron Rodgers has the leverage over most of these teams right now, because there's no one else out there. And I don't think my colleague Chase Daniel is willing to get back in the game. He seems to like our podcast.
Yeah, I would say I'd imagine it's a lot nicer hanging out with you than having to go and hang out with a bunch of those guys there and hold the clipboard. So Chase making the right decision, certainly. On the home front, Dianna, we've talked a lot about Chase and his brethren in the quarterback room. Dad and I were mentioning this in the first hour of the show. Have we heard anything new in the way of Trey Hendrickson's market? I mean, we had the announcement that the Bengals were allowing him to seek a trade market, and then it seemed pretty quiet by and large as the rest of free agency's raged.
Yeah, it's quiet because there are teams out there who are willing to pay Trey. And we understand that market is booming right now after what we saw from Max Crosby's deal and Myles Garrett. The pass rush position, that's what you want to do right now if you're not a quarterback in terms of making the most money. So I've spoken to a bunch of teams who want to do it. That's not the problem. The problem is the Cincinnati Bengals. Their asking price for one GM even said to me just was ridiculous is how it was described. So I think until Cincinnati's willing to wiggle on that a bit and change their price, and we see it all the time. I mean, look at the DK Metcalf situation where they originally were looking for a first and a third, and they came down off that price. So you ask for the most, you see how everything shakes, and then you go from there. While Cincinnati's also trying to get a deal done with T. Higgins. We're waiting to see how this is progressing. I'm continually told that they're trying to get this done, that they're trying to make this a priority, as well as obviously Jamar Chase's deal. But Cincinnati definitely has a lot of business that they need to address. And I think teams like Washington, for example, are watching this Trey Hendricks situation, hoping that they can jump in here, and make a move.
Is there any way, and it's hard to do, to give Cincinnati the benefit of the doubt of having Trey seek a trade and see what other teams value the money at, and then Cincinnati say, okay, you got your value from other teams, we'll pay that?
Yeah, I think that's completely fair, that could be on the table, right? It could be Matthew Stafford part 2 on the defensive side of the ball of go check it, George. Right. All right, you're right. You are worth this. You are top of the market. I just don't think Cincinnati needs to find that out. I think they know his value, which is why their asking price is so high right now. It's just going to be a matter of, do they want to pay that number? And I think Cincinnati has shown over the last few seasons they don't want to pay. Yet this is a group, a unit, the entire defense needs a makeover. And I mean, simply put, you look at the Cincinnati defense and it is Trey Hendrickson. And that's no disrespect to the rest of those guys. There's obviously more players there, but he's the star of that group. And they need him. So at some point, I'm having a hard time, truthfully, kind of understanding the philosophy of the Cincinnati Bengals moving forward, because to me, you're now going to pay 2 receivers. Let's just say you're spending $70 million between these 2 guys, thinking T's going to get 30, Jamar most likely 40-ish, maybe even more now that the numbers have changed here with non-quarterbacks. That's a lot of money to spend on offense. And I know those are Joe Burrow's guys. I get it. But unless you're going to score 97 points a game, which I guess Joe Burrow could do it. To me, I'm not sure what their plans are here on defense in terms of trying to keep up and give that support to the offense, especially if you lose a player like Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, Al Golden waiting with bated breath right now to try and find out what he's going to have to work with in his first year back on the defensive side of the ball over there. But I'm with you. We saw Cincinnati put up a ton of points last year, one of the best offenses in the NFL, and it didn't net them a whole hell of a lot when it came to the results. So no question about the results every time we've got Dianna Russini on here. Again, read her and check out the scoops over at The Athletic, Scoop City with her and Chase, who has decided not to come out of retirement and to stick around and hang out with Dianna. Thank you, Dianna. We hope the Twitter doesn't crash again on you anytime soon.
Thanks. Well, we know if Chase did go back to the NFL, he'd be the highest paid backup quarterback because the guy is an absolute pro
true.
when it comes to getting the best. So thank you, guys.
That's true.
Absolutely. The bagman himself, Chase Daniel.
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr., and Mike Golic Sr. NBA playoffs are looming, and we have a clearer picture of who will be competing for the championship. But apparently, there's a lack of respect for the Thunder in the West, at least according to Windy on ESPN. So take a listen to him shedding some light on how the league is perceiving the Thunder.
Stephen A., I don't mean to have to be the guy who is defending Oklahoma City day in and day out on this program. I'm not even like arguing that they are a lock or that they are one of the great teams of the last decade. But my God, is there an incredible amount of disrespect for this team. And Mad Dog, it's not just you. I hear it every day. I hear it implicitly from other people I talk to in the league. I hear it implicitly from players out there who are like, yeah, we'll be all fine with on the same side of the bracket as Oklahoma City. They just don't respect them.
No respect. Of course, the Thunder went out and made a statement last night, clinching a playoff berth by beating the Celtics. So put some respect on OKC's name. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Dad, that's amazing to me, this notion that, and I get it, we're a do-it-in-the-postseason society. The Stugatzes of the world have won, and so if you want to fall back on that, I guess I can understand to a point, but man, it's been the last couple of years now of a pretty clear and consistent upward trajectory from this team, from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and to go into TD Garden last night and to notch a win the way they did. I get if you're Boston, without Kristaps Porzingis, there still feels like another level you can unlock, and he wasn't on the court. But man, in general, I don't know what there is to doubt about Oklahoma City and all the different ways that they can beat you.
Oh, listen, I agree. I mean, but that's what people think about OKC, and that they don't think people don't think that Cavs can get by Boston because they didn't go through enough playoff heartache. OKC. Listen, that was a good game last night. 10 ties, 10 lead changes. Oklahoma City pulled away. Got their distance in the fourth quarter. No Kristaps Porzingis, as we talked about for Boston. No Jalen Williams though for OKC in this one. And what SGA continues to do is just amazing. He had 34. Jason Tatum had 33 in this one. Chet Holmgren had 23. I mean, they are deep. They are now 2-0 against Boston. So the Celtics are 2-2 against Cleveland and 0-2 against Oklahoma City. Everybody says those are the three that are really vying for the title, though there are those that think it's going to be Denver and Oklahoma City in the Western Conference Finals. But, by the way, Denver can't get past Minnesota. Denver's lost their last 5, including last night, to Minnesota. So, feather in the cap of Minnesota, in a playoff run should they meet Denver. But it's just because it's two new teams, right? Cavs, Oklahoma City. They could easily meet in the finals, leaving last year's winner Boston out. And I'm with Windy. I don't understand where a lack of respect would come from.
Boy, you trying to shoehorn the Cavs into this conversation, our producer Bailey trying to shoehorn Timberwolves propaganda in through you. The just open-faced chilling on this show is unbelievable going on, trying to put those teams in the category with Oklahoma City. I love you guys dearly. I think those teams are very good. I do think Oklahoma City and Boston are probably in a tier that I would put them on by themselves right now. I guess the Cavaliers do belong in that tier also. But, man, you want to talk about – I think, Dad, the best part about all of these teams, though, is that the styles are very distinct. At a time where we're talking about the three-pointification of the NBA, that really does seem to centralize in Boston. Last night, the Oklahoma City Thunder attempted 37 threes in that game and win against the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics attempted and set a record in the NBA's history with 36 attempted threes in the first half last night. They ended up shooting 63 total in the game, and that shows the other disparity. I know a lot of people hit up Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and, including our own producer Bailey, and call him a free throw merchant, but you look at the disparity at the line. OKC got to the line 35 times. The Boston Celtics only 12, but that's what happens when you're not going towards the basket with the intent to score consistently. I mean, Dad, how many times in that game did we watch a guy like Jaylen Brown get all the way to the basket, him or Drew Holiday, and have a wide open look at what felt like an easy layup and still do the thing that they know it's drilled into them to kick it out to the 3-point line, where they have made this iteration of the Celtics team.
It is stunning how they drive to the hoop. And Jaylen Brown loves driving to the hoop, but then just kicks it back. It just to 3-pointers. It is amazing. And so you kind of live and die by it. Now they play good defense for the most part, but they live and die by the threes. Who took the most? Jason Tatum took 13. Al Horford chucks him up. He took 12. Derek White took 12. Derek White had a sequence in this game where he actually blocked Chet Holmgren on the defensive side and then scored on the offensive side. I thought, my God. But listen,
my
kudos
guy,
also.
Derek White, his life and the Boston Celtics' lives changed the minute he decided to fully shave his head. Derek White was one of the many, like me, that held on for too long. And when he finally made the decision to come on home, Boston Celtics win a championship. He continues his rise as a player. And sequences like that, I am firmly convinced, would not have been possible when he was hanging on to the bad hairline.
So you're saying him coming on home helped him with that sequence. Okay, listen, I'm not bald, so I don't know. You can talk about your bald brother, and I'll talk about SGA. He has now gone 60 games of scoring 20 or more points. 7th player in NBA to do that, right? The modern players that have done it have been Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and Kevin Durant. So, I mean, the dude is on an absolute tear for what he's doing. It's interesting. I heard talk about if you put up blind resumes of Jokic and SGA, that SGA would actually, I mean, Jokic would actually have better numbers. He's averaging a triple-double. He's 3 points behind. He's a number 3 scorer in the league. SGA's number 1, 32 to 29. But the rest of, averaging a triple-double, that the stats for Jokic, a 3-time MVP, are better than SGA, but SGA is clearly the favorite. And listen, I have no problem with that, but do you wonder if there is Jokic fatigue? Kind of like we talked about in the NFL with Lamar Jackson fatigue, and it goes to Josh Allen. Is there Jokic fatigue?
Well, Senior, speaking of SGA, really quick, his logo was posted Batman style on a bunch of buildings in Boston last night after the win, which is pretty incredible. Yeah, they just were like, send up the SGA signals, like on the Celtics. It was on TD Garden on the side of it, which is pretty hysterical. So that's some.
How do you even make that happen legally? Like, if you're TD Garden, like, can you stop them from doing that? That seems like something I would be pissed at if I was the home team and all of a sudden you came in and just stamped my stadium with your. Now, I guess he earned the right to do it by winning in that game.
Yeah, and it's like, how do you stop it? Where's it coming from? I don't know. I mean, I guess they could stop it eventually, but not before people get pictures.
No, that's a fair point. And Dad, honestly, this is clear marketing for a player overall, but certainly helps bolster the MVP campaign. We see stuff like this all the time. And I do think it is, Dad, that renewed energy around the conversation for SGA, who, right, wrong, or indifferent, you talk about voter fatigue. It's a thing that I think does happen. And when SGA has made this rise, he's the best player on the clear best team in the NBA right now. I think that's going to be tough. He leads the NBA in 20-point, 30-point, 40-point, 50-point, and 60-point games this season. And he's doing it on the team that's been far and away the 1 seed in the Western Conference. And I know sometimes that's an overly simplistic way to view the award, but I think that combined with the fact that you're right, Dad, people have kind of gone nose blind to just how great Nikola Jokic is, where you could probably still make the argument he's the best player in the NBA, but because you're getting someone coming in and doing it in a way that's also very visually pleasing. Like, again, I understand that because SGA so far outpaces the field in terms of free throws attempted, that some people might try and, lean too far into that. But, man, he's got such a smooth game. There's such a great mid-range element to it that seems so lost in the modern NBA. And all of those things, I think, between the aesthetics and the outcomes all make the MVP case pretty ironclad for him in a way that I won't beef very much with.
No, I won't beef with it either. But it seems like it should be closer than it is. But again, close doesn't matter. Close only, matters in horseshoes. Whether you're second by 2 points or second by, 100 points, you're still second. SGA is going to win it. And again, I don't have a problem with it. I'm just kind of mentioning that you put up Jokic's stats, and they're pretty damn good. I mean, you're talking about Oscar Robertson, Russell Westbrook, and Jokic averaging a triple-double in basketball. So it's pretty impressive for a big man.
Oh, yeah, listen, for him to be doing that at 7 feet tall is insane. Now, the point is well served, though, from last night. And this is another interesting part of, getting out of the Western Conference specifically is the matchups are going to be fascinating and how this works out for each team. I think that's why Oklahoma City, you see so much emphasis on trying to figure out, hey, defensively, can we put this two bigs lineup out with Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren pretty consistently? Because with Hartenstein and what a great and capable passer he is, and Chet with the way he can space the floor, it works pretty well. But I saw the numbers going into the game last night. They become a terrible three-point defending team with those two guys on the court. You saw a bunch of zone defense when those guys were out there. Yeah. And so I am fascinated with how that's going to match up because, Dad, you saw last night for Nikola Jokic, Minnesota's really had an answer for him. This Timberwolves team, sans Karl Anthony Towns, that's been trying to figure itself out, is getting better production out of Julius Randle lately, still has Rudy Gobert in the middle defensively as the stopper. And obviously Anthony Edwards is the up-and-coming star that everyone got obsessed with last year. But it's just one of the examples of, in the West, it seems like the big is an automatic price of admission that you need to get out of there. And how these teams match up individually, kind of like was the story last year with Minnesota, is going to be fascinating to try and handicap come postseason time. But right now, you'd have to give the advantage to Minnesota, specifically with Denver. As you pointed out, they've gone on a run since last year's postseason where the Nuggets just cannot beat this team.
Yeah, Memphis now sits, or they're tied actually with Denver in the 2 slot. The Grizzlies, who have won 4 straight. So it's like pick a team that's going to face Oklahoma City in the Western Conference Finals at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, you talk about that 2 seed where the Lakers used to reside. They now on a 2-game slide. They've got their game coming up against the Bucks on the road tonight. That'll be a national game, so I'm sure we'll get a renewed round of Lakers conversation tomorrow. And Dad, at the very least, I forget who said this. I wish I could give them credit, but probably good for the discourse that LeBron went down and the Lakers lost 2 straight, so we don't get, how important, especially, I mean, in light of all the LeBron and Stephen A. beefing that's gone on lately, that could have easily turned into a new round of how important is LeBron James to the Los Angeles Lakers at this point coming up on First Take. And we get to avoid that considering it's shown he's still very important to this team as they drop 2 straight.
Yeah, listen, they're not going anywhere without LeBron in the lineup. And as far as the altercation, LeBron talking about to Stephen A. basically about LeBron's kid, I can, as a father of kids who were in sports, I can see LeBron's side of it, believe me, where someone's talking about your kid in a way would absolutely friggin' light a fire under me. We certainly know it did your mother. We had to stop her many times from hitting send on critical things online. But yeah, it's tough for me to ever blame a parent when they're sticking up or defending their kid.
Yeah, it is interesting with this. And even talking to Mom about that, she drew the delineation of, does it become different when you're a professional, when all of a sudden you're paid? I know for years, talking about college athletes in general, I always felt like there was that line of demarcation here. I do think, for what it's worth, I remember the First Take segment that I'm sure was at least part of LeBron's issue, where Stephen A. particularly appealed to LeBron James, the father, and said, stop all this. And once you stop making it about basketball and start really siloing it down to that relationship, I can understand where if you're LeBron James, you maybe do feel like this crossed the line. And I got to say, we're 6'4", you're 6'5", Dad. I don't have many people tower over me. I give Stephen A. credit for standing there while LeBron James towered over his ass on the court. Well, that's got to be an intimidating visual to all of a sudden turn up on.
Yeah. I also I think Stephen A. knew LeBron wasn't going to punch him or anything. And I do agree. Once you hit pro sports, the delineation probably moves toward you have to let the criticism hit. But as a parent, very, very difficult to do in practical application.
Big mama bear energy from LeBron James on the court with Stephen A.
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr., and Mike Golic Sr. here with you. Fellas, Angel Reese made some waves on her podcast when she casually said that WNBA players could sit out if they're not given what they want, i.e. more money. What did you guys think of this? Do we think the players should consider striking if they can't get better pay? What's your take on hearing Angel Reese say it aloud?
Yeah, Dad. So it was her podcast, Unapologetically Angels, her and Dejanay Carrington talking about kind of the current landscape of the WNBA, where they had opted out of the current collective bargaining agreement at a time where women's basketball is at the height of its popularity in my lifetime and probably the history of the league. The television numbers all trending up. You've got expansion around the league. The women's game in college is incredibly popular and has a pipeline of young stars getting ready to come to the league. And right as the NBA had negotiated new TV rights both for them and for the WNBA, since if anyone is unfamiliar, the NBA Board of Governors owns 60% of the WNBA, and so they negotiate the television rights for the WNBA. And they negotiated a new deal that's going to jump the TV revenue considerably. The league was making around $60 million a year off TV revenue before. And in this new deal that kickstarts next year, that's set to jump to about $200 million a year. So around $140 million increase per year in the TV revenue that the league has been driving. And so the women of the WNBA, Dad, understandably, and you're a former member of a players association, and I'm sure can understand this, they decided to, with the option in their CBA, opt out of their collective bargaining agreement and bargain anew to try and get more. So this all to me, Dad, seems like the understandable processes that are a part of the growing pains for any league at the point the WNBA is at right now, but especially from the PA side, when you see all this new money out there, of course they're going to want some.
And this is a position the WNBA players have not been in. One of a bit of power. We'll see just how much. Now, I was part of a strike in '87. My brother Bob was actually part of 2 strikes. And, you know, when you strike, normally, obviously, it's about money, but it's also about other things as well. You just prioritize what you're looking for. The WNBA and the WNBPA and the WNBA have until October 31st, till Halloween, to come to terms on a new CBA or they're going to opt out. The 2 sides have met for preliminary discussions in December, but there was no substantial news. Nafisa Collier, I thought, had some good quotes about it. We need to talk now. No one wants a lockout, but players are prepared for any possibility right now. And here's the key. For people that I know there are some people saying, oh, what do you mean they want NBA money? They don't want NBA money. Nafisa Collier says players are not looking to make NBA level money, but they do want, and here's the thing, they want NBA level revenue sharing. Revenue sharing for pro sport, for football, for basketball is basically 50-50. Revenue coming in, 50% to the team, the owners, 50% to the players. I believe in the WNBA, it's 10% to the players or in that area. And listen, the WNBA hasn't been making money. The WNBA has been supported by the NBA. But the WNBA is now in a new position, right? Especially with the TV rights deal, where bigger money is going to come in. Remember, the rookies coming in make like Caitlin Clark made, I think, $68,000, $70,000. And the most you can make, I think, is in the a little high 200s. And it's everywhere in between there. So with more money coming in, I'm not to say that the WNBA is all of a sudden going to make tens of millions of dollars, but they're going to get more money to spend with the TV contract. So I think the players are in a perfect position to say, okay, way more money is coming. As you mentioned, it was $60 million, now $200 million. Way more money is coming in. Let's make the split a little more fair. So that's what this is about. And again, the players, I think, are in a great position. Now, how far do you take it, right? How far do you take it? Where do you draw a line in the sand? That's always a thing. The NFL, we would usually lose strikes. Baseball, they would normally win strikes, the players. So it's how far you take it, because now you have a bigger disparity in like NFL. Like I was making $62,000 a year and the high price guys were making millions a year. It's a huge disparity. In the WNBA, there's 70,000 to 200,000, still a big amount, but not as big a disparity. So all looking to jump the minimum to the maximum. And the WNBA players are, I think, Mike, are in a great position to ask for that. The popularity is at its highest. The TV ratings are at its highest. The attendance is at its highest. That's called leverage to say, hey, you got to make the split more for us. It's just a matter of what number they land on. Do I think it's going to land on 50-50? I don't know. That'd be a big jump for the WNBA to go from 10% to 50%. But the players are in a position to ask for more. There's no doubt about that.
This group of women in particular, and Dad, you always talk about the difficulty any players association has in trying to get all its members on the same page. Is right now, before expansion, you've still got, and there was the documentary 144 that came out about the women of the W. That's because there are 144 spots with the current allotment of teams you had. It's a very small group. It's one that, quite honestly, with the group of women involved, we have seen the WNBA stand together on causes before. This is a league built off largely black women who are used to having to go out here and stand together to get the things that they want in general. And so them being faced with this does seem like the perfect storm at this juncture for them to go out. And like we heard from, Angel and Dejanay on that podcast, if it comes to striking, they've got to threaten that because, Dad, you always point out that's the biggest and best leverage tool you have is withholding your services. And I went back and wanted to look, Dad, because it's worth reminding people, too. The WNBA has been around since 1997. That was the inaugural WNBA season. So we are much comparatively less – it's a smaller life cycle right now for this league compared to some of the other leagues we're talking about. The NBA started in the 1940s and got to the point where all the way back, and I wanted to look at like the history of NBA labor disagreements here because everyone always talks about and reminds people back in the late 70s, early 80s, the NBA was on life support. Finals games were on tape delay. They were having attendance and television issues. And that didn't stop the players from threatening to strike in 1983. And when they did, right as Magic Johnson and Larry Bird were getting to this cusp of the height of their powers that everyone talks about saved the NBA, the players threatened to strike and ended up getting, for the first time in the history of pro sports, for any sport, there had been ticket gate sharing, but there hadn't been full-blown basketball-related revenue sharing. And the players got that out of that moment where other owners in the league are talking about teams potentially having to fold. There's concerns about that. You get Jerry Buss coming out and saying, if we didn't get caps on player salaries, that, hey, eventually we wouldn't be around here as a league. All of that financial strife. And the players still said, bleep that. We're going to go out here and make sure we advocate for ourselves. And they got revenue sharing for the first time in a way that changed the landscape of sports overall. And so I think for people that point to the differences in the financial situation for the WNBA, that relationship with the NBA, that's not the WNBA Players Association's job. It's their job to go out there, use the leverage that they have to advocate for the most that they can possibly get, understanding, you won't get everything that you want, but you're better positioned now to go and make substantive change with all of the momentum and leverage on your side right now.
All signs point toward, obviously, them getting a big jump of the revenue share. The League Unrivaled has helped players. They're making, like $200,000. It's stopping them from going overseas and playing. That's a good thing. But you saw they got private flights. The steps are just increasing and really magnified at increasing with how much the popularity has increased. So there's no doubt the revenue share will go up. It's just a matter of negotiating how high. And you're right, it's a smaller number of players to try and band together. That's the thing, keeping all the players together. And if they can do that, they certainly will have some power. They're going to get more of a revenue share. It's just a matter of what number they agree on.
And they're going to get more revenue soon. More teams coming, paying expansion fees, potentially larger inventory for games. The investments continue to pour in for the women's game at this juncture. We'll finish up next, This, That, and the Third on Gojo and Golic. All right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you to the rest of the day. Download, subscribe, rate, review the show. Leave us a 5-star rating. Watch us here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on our Gojo and Golic YouTube channel. Subscribe and hit the bell over there. And check out interviews you may have missed, like our friend Dianna Russini, the Athletics senior NFL insider who stopped by to update us on the latest with free agency, Aaron Rodgers, Kupp, Trey Hendrickson, and plenty of other great nuggets from one of the best in the business. If you missed that, get it wherever you get our podcast or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show. Guys, let's start off with this, that, and the third. We love a good bit of plane drama on this show, and today is no exception. So I don't understand fully the specifics of this, but essentially a woman is now suing an airline potentially over getting cursed out by another mom on a plane for not giving up her window seat to a crying child here. Jesse, do you have further explanation on this?
She's not suing the mother. She's suing the airline and a random passenger who filmed her. So she gets to her seat on the airplane. She has a window seat. There's a child in her seat. She asks the child politely, "Oh, I think we're confused. This is my seat." The child moves. Apparently the child's then crying. Maybe they wanted to sit by the window. Don't know the full story there. Essentially, a random passenger started filming her, saying, "You're a terrible person for making the child move," et cetera, et cetera. It gets posted on the internet, snowballs. This woman is shamed. She was working as a banker. She's apparently no longer in that field. She was facing a lot of harassment. So she's suing the airline and the random woman who was filming her, who is not the child's mother. So she's just saying basically she was subjected to emotional distress. She was well within her rights to get her seat that she paid for. She was entitled to it. And now she's suing for everybody blowing up her spot. And personally, I hope she wins.
Listen, you are well within your rights to keep your seat. And it's just a matter of questions of what is the proper time to give up your seat and who you give it up for. And are you giving up that you want to be in an aisle seat or you want to be in a window seat and now you're in a middle seat? It better be a really hell of a good reason to move to a middle seat. I did this once when I was when you guys, Mike, were young, and I was at ESPN, and we would go cover the Pro Bowl in Hawaii. So we were coming back from Hawaii, and your mother's mother, Jan, Grandma Jan to you, was on the trip with us, and her seat was a regular seat, and we were in first class. So I gave up my seat on the plane. I said, "Jan, come up and sit in my first class seat, and I'll go sit, in the back where your seat is." And the flight attendants were like, "Oh, that's so nice," because it's a long ass flight. Like, "Oh, that's so nice of you to do. You're such a nice person." So it's amazing. Those same flight attendants, like during the flight, I just got up and walked up front to check on my family, and the curtains were pulled and I went through the curtain. And the same flight attendants who were like, "Oh, that's so nice," were like, "Oh, sir, you can't be up here. You have to go back to your seat." I'm like, "Wait a minute, you're just telling me how nice I was for giving up my seat to my mother-in-law, and now you're kicking me saying, get the hell back." It's like, wow.
No respect.
Go back with the unwashed masses, you creature. No, you know what? But that, totally understandable time to do that and should be granted some leeway and some perks because of that. Giving it up for, a military member that you see on the plane, giving it up for a pregnant woman who wants to be closer, provided we're all dealing. Honestly, I should say. I saw the other day, someone tried to offer a seat switch to be closer to their spouse. They promised the person they were switching with an aisle seat. They walked back and found a middle seat, and that person promptly walked back up and said, No, you're going to sit back there, which to me makes perfect sense. If you're trying to offer someone a middle seat, you're better off just sitting there on your thumb, because you ain't going to get nothing out of me for no middle seat here. That's barbaric, and to even offer is disrespectful and insane.
Yeah, you have to switch for the same seat. It has to be like an aisle for an aisle. Maybe you could go window for aisle, but you can't go window or aisle for middle seat, especially in today's day and age where you have to pay for everything. Like, you're paying more for that window or aisle seat than for the middle seat. So it makes sense. And people, I think, take advantage of the system. They don't want to pay for the, window or aisle if they've got kids or something. And then I get it, it's more expensive, but then you get in there and you're just hoping you can force someone to switch, which it kind of sounds like this was that situation. So I totally get why you're like, no, I paid for this seat. I'm sitting in it.
100% couldn't agree more. Let's move on to that, Jesse. What do we got?
So almost 22 years ago, a young 13-year-old performed the national anthem, and she was struggling. She was having a tough moment. So NBA coach Mo Cheeks helped her out. He got up there, notoriously shy guy, got up and started singing with her so she wouldn't feel so afraid up there. And last night they reunited at the Blazers game. Watch this. Wow. 22 years later, she came back and she crushed it, and you love to see that, guys.
That's very cool.
I didn't realize people stuck around the national anthem circuit that long. 22-year gap between anthems. I don't know, Dad, how you get into the pipeline for anthem singers, but apparently she's got some staying power.
Boy, she does. She sounded great as well. And Mo Cheeks, he got gray. His hair got gray in those 22 years, man. Wow.
I could say apparently he had other stressors in his life besides having to help the young woman sing the national anthem. So very cool moment that both of them got to kind of relive on the other side. Her hair did the full flip from one side to the other too, which is fun to see the sands of time have that effect for her hair. Jesse, let's get to the third here. I think we've got another video clip for the people.
That is key. That is really quick. Just men. You can just change your part whenever you want as a woman. That doesn't, I could do that right now. Anyway, we have a Matthew Stafford sharing an Aaron Donald story. Take a listen.
In the weight room, right? I'll never forget, we had like a Make-A-Wish kid had been like, my dream is to go like be with Aaron Donald for a day kind of thing. And thankfully this kid at that point had kind of beaten the odds and had beaten the cancer that he had, I believe, and like was really on the mend. And it was really cool. Like he came in and you're like, oh man, this guy's like doing good, right? High school kid, bigger kid, loved to play football. And AD was like, cool, come work out with me, right? I'm walking by, I'm like, yo, what's about to go down? Yeah, right? I'm over there doing like banded something, and like 30 minutes in and AD's just ripping curls out. Next thing you know, this kid is puking in the trash can in the hallway. And I'm like, AD, can you please like have a little couth, a little understanding? Like,
the kid got what he wanted.
You want to be AD, you got to work like AD. It was
been on chemo for months, AD.
I'm like, God, can we just relax on the bicep curls for a little bit? It's like, how many do we do till we throw up? You know what I mean? It was just like...
So basically, Aaron Donald took a Make-A-Wish kid and made him work out till he puked?
Well, it's a little different than that. So the young man did survive his battle with cancer, but wasn't, some small, frail kid. He's currently an offensive lineman at Georgia Southern and was quick to point out and quote tweet the post and said, it's a workout I'll never forget, but you forgot the part where I came back and finished. So the young man not only finished the workout, but now is going out and kicking ass and is helping pave the way at Georgia Southern for some great backs and quarterbacks. So kudos to the young man there, Kyle Frazier, for going out and doing his thing. But Dad, Aaron Donald is an absolute madman, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah, Aaron Donald cutting him no slack at all. Listen, the great for the kid, or the young man, I should say, to beat cancer and be able to play football. I'm sure his dream. But yeah, Aaron Donald, I mean, just showing him what, hey, you gotta work through it. You gotta work through it. Puking in a garbage can. I mean, and Matthew Stafford sounded like he knew it was coming. He knew it was coming, knowing AD.
Yeah, no, he's walked by that weight room and seen. I mean, God, doing arms and having you puke feels tame compared to the knife fighting drills that we used to see Aaron Donald doing. Yeah. So how you puke from doing biceps is beyond me. And just a reminder that I've clearly never trained as hard at Aaron Donald at anything, let alone getting my arms to look the way that his do. Train hard by going to download, subscribe, rate, and review the show, leaving it a 5-star rating. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Hopefully I'll have internet back by then. For the love of God.